If it looks like I'm half awake right now, it's because I am. Rings of Power Season 2 just came out, and I watched all 3 episodes back to back to back. And I can say with confidence, it is probably the most boring show I've ever forced myself to watch through. I'm not ashamed to admit I dozed off a few times in the first 2 episodes. It's impossible not to. It's such an unbelievable, unfathomably boring snooze fest of a production that somehow costs like $1 billion or something. And I even rewound the parts that I slept through because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything good. Spoiler alert, I didn't. All it did was extend this painful journey for 3 episodes. The third episode though, I hunkered down, muscled through it like Clockwork Orange style. I peeled my eyelids open so I didn't fall asleep and caught everything. And it's just so unremarkable in every possible category. Sitting through Rings of Power is like sitting through a Jigglypuff song. You just can't help but fall asleep. It's just so dull. I didn't like Season 1 very much, but I think Season 2 is off to an even more brutally boring start. 98% of these 3 episodes is just two characters talking to each other. They're just vomiting sob stories into each other's mouths like it's two girls, one cup. That is almost every single scene in Season 2. Like, the very first scene of Episode 1, I actually had high hopes for. It was pretty cool. It was a Sauron backstory about the first time he got betrayed when he tried to rise to power. It was cool. They had a bunch of like orcs stabbing him and shit, and he was just blowing up with blood, and then he turned into this ooze that reminded me of Ivan Ooze from Power Ranger, but with like the properties of venom. That was cool. And it's all downhill from there. I'm not saying this needs blood, guts, titties, and rock and roll to be interesting or anything. Like, I appreciate shows that are very well written and are extremely dialogue heavy. I don't need like a ton of, jingling keys to be entertained. Take, for example, Game of Thrones. There are a lot of times in Game of Thrones where a whole episode is mostly talking. But the difference between that and this is that in Game of Thrones, all the talking contributes to something. It pushes things forward. It builds the world, if nothing else. It fleshes out characters. It gets you invested in characters or situations. In Rings of Power, it all just feels like filler. It just feels like actual empty calories, like you're just chewing on styrofoam. Every character's conversation is just like this competition for throwing the biggest pity party that does nothing to progress the plot and keeps everything in the exact same place. Nothing moves forward. Nothing really changes until like one or two events that happen outside of dialogue, which is rare. It's just so worthless. We're 2 seasons deep now, and there's not a single character in the show that I care about. And I really feel like that'll be a sentiment shared by most viewers, because none of the characters have any real depth or any real reason to get invested in them. They don't do anything, really, aside from just talk in circles around each other and get nothing done, and then just get played like a fiddle by Sauron. Sauron is the only character in this show that is actually somewhat interesting and entertaining. Like any scene that Sauron is in, Sauron is by far the best part of that scene, and it's not even close. So in Season 2, it's full mask off, and now he's manipulating everyone. He's starting to make the rings, and he's getting Celebrimbor to work with him by, pretending to do... I don't want to get into spoilers, so I'm being very vague here, but he's getting a lot of shit done through manipulation and deceit. But sometimes he's just bad at it and it still works. So, like, there are times where it was a really good plan and he did a great job. I think the actor also does a pretty good job of, like, walking that line of, obviously evil and convincing enough that you can understand why someone would buy into the facade. But there are also some times where, like, he's talking to Durin and he's like, Elrond said that you are the wisest dwarf to have ever lived, actually, and you're super handsome, the biggest cock in all of Middle-earth. Are you not the one that I should trust with this task? Like, the most blatantly obvious lies ever, just like this ridiculous flattery out the wazoo. And Durin picks up on it, and he's like, I don't really trust him, but then still just plays right into the palm of his hands. But overall, I do still think Sauron is doing the best job here in Season 2 of at least having anything happen. Like, at least sometimes when he's convincing people to do shit, like, it's a well-executed scheme. a nefarious plot that was it's successful. Great. At least something is happening. Because every other character is just, oh god, it's so boring. Like, anytime we cut away from Sauron, it just becomes nap time. It's like the writers were trying to see if they could hypnotize people through really bland dialogue and really uninteresting scenes. And it works. I'll tell you what. It was hard to stay awake for these 3 episodes. Listening to 3 hours of TV static and rain sound effects ASMR would have been more stimulating than Rings of Power Season 2. And don't even get me started on some of the side quests. There's like some side adventures that are going on past the main plot. There's like 6 or 7 different like groups doing different things. And one of them is super not Gandalf guy, the Stranger, and the Harfoots just traveling, just endlessly traveling through sand and heat and complaining about it, and it's trying to help him find a staff, a Gand, as they call it, and it super sucks. I just don't even know why it's there. I mean, I know why it's there. Obviously, Gandalf is going to come from this guy. I'm pretty confident, but I think you could just give me like a slide that says, and then the stranger found a staff and became Gandalf. And that would be so much better than making me sit through them just fucking trekking through the desert so long doing nothing until he eventually summons a tornado. And then the end of scene. It throws out the 2 Harfoots. They get caught up in the tornado and he goes, "No!" And that's about it. Other than that, it's just them walking and talking in the desert. There are a couple of moments where there was like the start of something that could be cool about to happen, and then it doesn't. So there is a scene with some spiders that I thought, okay, this is kind of hype. And they do get kind of like bloody and gory, which is, I mean, that's always at least somewhat exciting. And they have this spider scene that's going on. And then it's just so underwhelming with how it plays out. He basically just stabs the spider, hops on a horse, and leaves, all in the span of like 45 seconds. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess that was easy. I thought it was going to be like a big thing. Like, I thought it was going to be like a huge obstacle, because there were like some orcs that were like, oh, don't follow him into there. That's the dark forest or some shit. And no one ever comes back alive. I mean, he came back alive like really, really easily. Just gets it with one of these maneuvers, the have at you then. Hops on a horse and leaves, saying, bye-bye, I gotta go trauma dump for the next 15 fucking minutes, speaking to a wall. I honestly don't know where the budget goes, because it is mostly just 2 characters talking in one location per scene. And it's not that impressive. It's not like they're on the back of fucking griffins talking to each other that look hyper-realistic or anything, where you need like a ton of CGI and shit. Like, they're just talking in some rooms. But that's it. Like, where is all the money going towards? It's not action scenes or anything. It doesn't really seem to be the environment. Because, I mean, we're getting a couple of, like, beautiful shots. Like, of course, there are some, like, really beautiful scenic shots. But there's not a ton of them. Certainly not enough to justify such a crazy budget for this. It seems highly bloated. I don't understand it. So yeah, I'm not really enjoying the first 3 episodes of Season 2 so far. Maybe Episode 4 really picks things up and the rest of the season slaps, but I'm not super optimistic about that. Right now, it seems like we're going to need Sauron to cook up a new Ring of Power here to give viewers the strength to stay awake through the next fucking 5 episodes of this snooze fest of a show. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to let you all know how Season 2 of this show is turning out so far. That's really about it. See ya.